Welcome to More Than Dentistry, where your hosts Evert and Waldo discuss life, dentistry, and everything in between with dentists around the world.
Hello and welcome to the More Than Dentistry podcast. Good morning, everyone. We're speaking to Clifford Yudelman. Am I pronouncing your surname right there?
Yeah, you put a bit of an Afrikaans twist on it. It's just
Okay.
Yudelman, but Yudelman is good.
Okay. Clifford, I think most guys in dentistry in South Africa knows about you. Clifford's got a practice in Sea Point, Cape Town. He's been there for the past 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. And Clifford is big into technology, as far as I know. I haven't been to your practice before, but everyone tells me you've got a beautiful spot there in Cape Town. So just tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to the listeners, if you don't mind.
Okay, so I'm very pleased to say that, I was born in 1960, which makes me, I'm in the low risk because I'm not quite 60 years old yet. In August, I'll be 60. So I know if you're like 60 and older, then you're in much higher risk for this, as the one guy in America calls it, this COVID thing. This COVID thing is really starting to get to us now that it's only been a week. But luckily, I'm only 59 and I'm feeling strong. And what was the question again?
Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice and your journey.
How much time have you got? Like another
We've
2
got
weeks?
lots of time. We can go. We've got 3 weeks or 2 weeks left.
Okay, well, enough about you. Let me tell you about myself. So of all my qualities, I think my humility is my favorite one. I get that sense of humor from my dad. My dad is 93, turned 93 last week, just before the lockdown. And my dad's a dentist, so I get my dentistry from him. He practiced for 57 years in Kensington in Johannesburg. And I think he's a lot more of a legend in South Africa than I'll ever be. I don't see myself as a legend when you say that a lot of people have heard about me. I've only been in South Africa. I've only been back in South Africa 5 years. I was overseas for a long time. Anyway, back to my dad. I do jump around a lot, guys, so you're just going to have to watch the rerun. So when I was about 3 or 4, we didn't have the internet or anything, and we were lucky in our house. My dad had a library. He'd come home, he'd have a little scotch, because that's what Jewish dentists do when they come home. They have a black label on the rocks. And by the way, I don't drink whiskey anymore. I used to. Anyway, and we had a library, and we were very lucky because we had Encyclopedia Britannica and we had World Book. But in my dad's library, he also used to, every month he used to get something called Dental Clinics of North America, and it was like our equivalent of our online learning and so on. Had amazing photographs, amazing cases, and I don't know if anyone's ever seen those books, Dental Clinics of North America, but it was prosthodontics and periodontics, and he would study every single night, and so I think I got a lot of that from him. And he loves telling a story that when I was about 3 or 4, he was busy. He was talking to someone, and I came and I was tugging on his trouser leg, and he looked down at me and he said, "What is it, my boy?" And I said, "Daddy, one day when I get big like you, I want to be a dentist just like you." So
Cool.
I love it. I love it when he tells that story, because I have to take it that it is true. I mean, he does make stuff up, but whenever he tells that story, I think that's when it started. I remember, when we were 16 years old, we used to I was going to a Jewish school. I went to King David in Linksfield. And then you had all the smoke on June 16th. We had the Soweto riots, as we call them, and the uprising. And then it came time, we had the army, and we had to decide what we were going to do at university. When we were 15 or 16, we had to choose. And there was no going back. You were either going to go to the army when you finished school, or you had to decide what you wanted to be. And they actually took a roll call in the class, and they went around the room. And, Johnny Katz was going to be an accountant, and this one was going to be a doctor, and that one was going to be a doctor, and that one was going to be a lawyer. And everyone was like clapping. It's like, yeah, doctor. And it came to me, and I said, yeah, I'm going to be a dentist. And everybody just packed up laughing, because I was a clown. I was the class clown. I never sat still. I was always in the principal's office. And I guess I've always kind of thought out of the box. I guess I'm an impulsive kind of person. If I decide I want to do something, I just do it. And I only visualize what's going to happen in 3 months and 6 months, and I start acting on it now. And that's where I'm at. Just checking my hair. Yeah, I'm actually not as bald as I look here in the video.
So fast forward a couple of years, you've traveled around the world. You've had practices in numerous countries. Just tell us a little bit about your traveling around the world and the difference in practicing in different countries.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to turn on the aircon because I closed the door so I don't wake anybody. It's like 9:15 here, and I'm sure everybody's still asleep. So I'll just turn on some aircon.
I've got a 4-year-old that wakes me up at 5.
By the way, I'm here at the waterfront catching some fresh air. There's Cape Union Mart over there. It is like a virtual background. I can mess it up for you. There's Table Mountain behind me. I'm actually sitting in my office here with a little video cam. So yeah, so I went to dental school, and I'm sure my dad must have bribed them, because I don't know how I got in, to be honest. In the end, my matric wasn't bad, but I think I just got in with my good looks. And they had an interview, and they said, what do you like doing? I said, well, I like building balsa wood model aeroplanes, and I'm really good with my hands. And by the way, my dad is Louis Yudelman. And they're like, okay, you're in. So, and I loved dentistry. I didn't have a second choice. If I didn't get into dentistry, I was just going to go to the army. I never wanted to be a doctor. I always wanted to be a dentist. And anyway, I qualified.
And you studied at Evert, so where did you study?
Yeah, at Evert. So
okay.
I qualified in 83. I happened to find a class photo with all my school buddies. Most of them practice overseas. There are very few left in South Africa. Things were quite different. I qualified in 83. I got married when I was 21. I was still at dental school. And I've only ever had a couple of girls in my life. I had a girlfriend for 3 years when I was at high school. And then I broke up with her, and that's part of the story. That's how I ended up back in South Africa. But anyway, I mean, I can go on a bit. It's probably boring already. But anyway, I had a few more girlfriends, and then I got married at 21. And my ex said to me, I want to go live in America. And I said, fine, we'll go to London, I'll do my exams, and we'll go live in America. And I moved to London in 83. And I must say the first 6 or 12 months out of dental school, we didn't have ComServe in those days, but most dentists went to London and got a job. You paid £7 and you registered, and you called, I think her name was Betty Philpott, and she sent you to go and work for a guy. There was Sorrell. There were a number of guys that owned multiple practices, the Aussies and even the South Africans, they used to call it bash the Nash. And I just felt sick to my stomach working in those days on the National Health, and I realized that the sooner I can get to America and practice what I thought would be, you know, decent dentistry, the better. But I had to still earn a living, and I was very lucky because I ended up in a few different practices where I could practice privately, even though I'd only been out of dental school for a short time. And I went to and from America a number of times. I had to do my national board exams in Chicago in '83. And I had to go to California and I had to do what we call the foreign board exam at University of the Pacific. And then in '86, I basically sat for a week with USC, University of Spoiled Children, University of Southern California, and I did the final board exam. That was the one. They'd been at dental school for 4 years, and they were just taught how to pass that exam. They had 4 years of training, and that's all they had to do was pass that exam. They then become a DDS, and that's it. They got their certificate. So I basically did the exact same exam that everybody who qualified in '86 at USC. So I don't like to look at it like I re-qualified, but it was a lot of work. I had to learn how to do gold foils, which we weren't taught. I had to do reverse 3/4 crowns. I had to do 7/8 crowns. I had to do gold, like lingual, like pin ledge, lingual crowns, and all kinds. There were about 20 different types of gold preps that you had to learn how to do. And anyway, I mean, I still get cold shivers when I think about that exam. And I mean, and there I was practicing in London, and I wasn't really trained to do all that gold work. And funnily enough, after I moved back to South Africa, I won't read it now, but I've got a great email that a patient from those days in London that he sent me. His name's Peter Brown. And if we had all day, I would read the letter. But Peter Brown sent me this letter when I was still living in Perth, which I'll get to. But anyway, and then it somehow it bounced, and it was in his outbox. And he tracked me down here once I'd moved to Cape Town, and he sent me the letter, and he had just had a gold inlay that had fallen out, and it was one that I'd done for him about 35 years ago. And it was a whole long story about all the gold work that I did on him. And I remember him really well because I basically restored his whole mouth with gold inlays and onlays, and I paid all the lab. He didn't know it, but I actually paid the lab. I used a very high-end private lab just off of Harley Street, and I funded the whole case. And even to this day, he said the National Health actually called him in afterwards because I did it for him on the National Health, but I used private labs, and they thought I was bashing the Nash, and they called him in, and they had a look at him, and they said they'd never seen anything like it, and they checked that he did have all the inlays and onlays and stuff that I billed for. And it was really heartwarming to get this letter. It's actually one of my prized possessions.
Okay,
emails. Yeah. Yeah.
So how long did you then work in America for?
Yeah, so when I was going to and from America to do my exams, I made contact with a lot of South African dentists, and one of them was down in San Diego. And his name was Brian Yudelman. Actually, maybe I shouldn't have mentioned his name because I don't have really fond memories. We had a business deal that went bad. But anyway, Brian, if you're watching this, somehow someone says they saw me and I mentioned you, all is forgiven. Basically, guys, if someone makes you sign a right of first refusal on a practice that you build up, just the right of first refusal is not what you're looking for. What you want is an option. So I worked with Brian. It was a startup practice, and in those days we didn't have the internet. We had the yellow pages, we had door hangers, we had the local newspaper, we had welcome wagon, we had word of mouth. Americans are great. If you get one American patient in and they like what you've done, they're going to then go, when they go and they buy milk or something down at the supermarket, they're going to gather an audience and they're going to tell everyone about you, and they're going to physically drag them into your office and insist. You know, subsequently when I went to Australia, I had a lot of American patients, and it's only because I had one, and the one told two more, and they told two more. And, you know, in those days, word of mouth was really great. I know things have changed a lot now, but yeah, you better ask me questions, otherwise I'm just going to talk back.
Yeah, I want you to elaborate a little bit on that, the right to first refusal versus the offer, the option to purchase. What happened there? Because I think that's a big thing in young dentists are signing contracts. I don't really know what they're signing, and 5 or 6 years later they burn their fingers when they want to get out. So maybe tell us what went wrong in your business partnerships that you had in America.
So, yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago. So in 1986, I rushed over to America on a temporary work visa. The guy wanted me there immediately. I looked at his practice. He had several practices. He showed me around his one practice the one day. And the next day, I was in this strip mall just outside of San Diego, and it was just a practice with no patients or anything. And the guy basically said to me, you know, work here for 2-3 years, whatever.
Clifford, you just broken up there.
Yeah. So I said to him, you know, because I'd actually been shafted quite a lot when I was in London. I mean, I even remember one guy I worked for, one of the first guys I worked for, he gave me a lift home one day, and he lived near where I was living, and he stopped and he put petrol in his car. He had a big Mercedes, and he lived in a big mansion. And at the end of the month, there was a deduction on my paycheck, and I said, "What's that for?" He said, "Oh, it's for petrol." So, you know.
So he deducted petrol from you, even though you never claimed for petrol.
No, because he gave me a lift, so he charged me.
Oh, he gave you a lift.
You know. Yeah, you know. So you know what they say: friends come and go, but enemies last forever. I mean, I have a patient, and they come in and they've moved down from Joburg or whatever, and it's been a few years since they've been to the dentist, and I say to them, "Oh, what's your dentist's name?" And they go, he was really good. Oh, he was great. My whole family went there, and he was so gentle. He never hurt me." And I said, "Well, that's why you don't remember his name." I said, "Because if he hurt you, you would remember." Excuse the French, the little fucker's name. So,
that's very true.
Yeah, you can bleep that one out. But,
that's all right.
You know, so if you're really gentle and your patients like you, don't worry. In 5 or 10 years' time, they won't remember your name. But if you hurt them, boy, they're going to tell everybody.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, just going back to San Diego, then you started in the strip mall.
Yeah. So a strip mall is like, basically, it's like this COVID thing. You know, people arrive, they've got to take their clothes off and you spray them down. Anyway, the strip mall is like a sprawling shopping center where you've got to drive up to whatever shop you're going to. And you might visit 2 or 3 shops on either side, but then say the bank is on the other end. You get in your car and you drive to the bank. It's a huge shopping center. And so I did I got my feet wet with marketing, letting people know that we were there. And long story short, once I can't make a long story short, but I'll just make it a little bit shorter.
Like a long story longer.
Yeah. And if I lose the point, just keep bringing me back. So
all right.
Okay, San Diego. So so eventually I got my green card, and I went to the guy and I said, okay, I got my green card, let's do the deal. And the guy looked at me and he smiled and he said, but the practice isn't for sale. And I said to him, well, but I've got a piece of paper, look here, I've got a right of first refusal. And the guy said, oh yeah, no, you have. When and if I sell the practice, you've got the right of first refusal. So definitely just keep working for me. And one day when I'm ready to sell, you're the first one on the list. You're right up there. So, and then I said, but you said you were going to sell it to me. He said, oh, I'm sorry. Did you think that you had an option? And I said, what do you mean? And it wasn't worth the paper it was written on.
Okay.
And so I was a very friendly guy in those days. And
how long did you work for him at this stage?
Huh?
How long did you work for him at this stage when you wanted to buy into the
I was not quite 29 years old yet, so I'd worked there for 3 years, and the practice was pumping.
Okay.
I built it up. I had a full-time hygienist. We were open Monday to Saturday. I don't remember exactly. It was at the point where we were ready to hire another associate.
Okay.
And it was doing, in those days, it was doing very well. I'd found the target market in the area. It was doing very well. And in those days in America, the associate only got 25%. So
sure.
If you guys, you guys are getting 35 and 40%, I think unless you've run a practice yourself, and try and run a practice with an overhead of 60% and go home with 40% of your turnover. I mean, I don't know what guys are paying out there, so hopefully I didn't blow it. But in America in those days, you were very happy with 25%, and you could earn a good living. It's.
So then you left after that deal fell through. Did you go somewhere else?
Yeah. So, Jesus, how this is going to go on for a long time. Is it normally an hour? These things?
It's normally actually half an hour. We can go for an hour. So let's see. We'll edit it a little bit shorter.
It's a COVID special, eh? What time did we start?
We've got time. We started about 9, so 35 minutes in.
Jeez.
But it's good. It's lessons that young dentists should be learning, because I think we don't often speak about contracts and how people get burned, and it happens so often. And so it's good to learn lessons from guys like you who's been through the thing. So yeah, I think telling that story is gonna make a lot of dentists think twice what type of contract they sign. Because I also, my experience, I'll just tell you quickly. I've been working in the same practice for my whole professional career. I did my ComServe, then straight afterwards I joined the practice. And 2 things happened, and if my partner listens, it's also fine, because that's what happened. The first of all, I waited too long before I wanted to buy into the practice. So initially we said, I'm going to buy into the practice, and I said, I'll let you know when I'm ready. But it took me 5 years to buy in. And by the end of that 5 years, the practice was doing so well. In my opinion, I kind of felt like I was paying for my own goodwill. So they pulled up the books of the practice and said, look how good this practice is doing. So you've got to pay X amount of money. But I was like, in the back of my mind, I thought, but I contributed to that money. If I back up and leave now, the books are not going to look the same in 3 months' time. So the one lesson I would tell dentists is, if you're happy with the practice, buy in as quickly as possible if you've got the option. Don't wait for your goodwill to push up the price of the practice. Maybe just tell us what you think on owning property and owning a building in a dental practice.
So I've never owned the building or property of any practice that I've had, because after after that story with the practice in San Diego, I went to a dentist in the next suburb who I knew. He was an older guy. He reminded me of my dad, and I told him what had happened, and he had some ill health, and he said, well, won't you please come and join me in my practice? We'll work together for a year, and I'll introduce you to each and every one of my patients, and then the practice will be yours. But what we'll do is I'm going to actually sell you the 100% of the practice, and then I'll work for you for 25%. So at 29, I bought this practice. I'm proud to say I was back in San Diego in about August, and I went with Robin and the hygienist. Now 17 years later, she still works there. The receptionist still works there, and the one assistant is still there.
Oh, really? Sure.
It's got 5 operatories. When I bought it from the guy, Dr. Brunson, he had a couple of hygienists part-time, and he worked out of one surgery, and he was still working standing up. And he'd have a look, and if you needed 3 amalgams, they'd book you like 3 half-hour appointments, and there were no computers in those days, and Arlene knew everybody's phone number. If you went, she was there for 30 years. She stayed on with me for another 3 years, and then she had, I can't remember, it wasn't Parkinson's, she had something else.
Okay.
She had MS and had a flare-up, but you could go to Arlene and say, can you call so-and-so? And she just dialed their number. She knew everybody, she knew everything.
Oh, really?
Anyway, I mean, back to that practice. I was renting. It was in another much smaller strip mall, and it had 5 surgeries, and it was very narrow. But we did a lot there. In the end, I added several more associates, and we had about 9 days of hygiene. And I ended up sponsoring a dentist from South Africa. He came over with his family, and he worked for me for 7 years. And he ended up buying a practice in another suburb. It was a dentist who had fallen ill as well. And then I had another guy come and work for me, and he could have bought the practice, but I don't know, he wasn't very entrepreneurial, and he went part-time, in fact. And then a young guy who now still owns the practice, he's a Chinese, American-born Chinese. His wife is a pedodontist. And Steve has been happily working in that practice. He owns it. And he hasn't changed it at all. Still has the same pictures up on the wall. He painted it the same beige color, and the same patients still come there. It's like 5th generation.
Sure.
Before Dr. Brunson, some other guy owned it like since the 20s or something. I mean, that's America. But anyway, so one day a patient came in. I was already nearly 40. So I'd been there for 12 years I moved there in 86. So now in 2001, one of my patients came in and said, oh, your classmate, Kevin, has moved from London. He now lives in Australia, and he loves it in Australia. And I said to her, well, I'm not that enamored with America and, George Bush Jr. and all of that. And I'd love to go live in Australia one day. And she put like a spark under me. She said, well, if you want to go move there, you better move there before you turn 45. And so I got the ball rolling, and even though I'd registered in Australia and New Zealand after I graduated, I'd let my registration lapse. And I studied up to do my Australian board exams again. And on 9/11, I was actually supposed to be at the embassy just next to the Pentagon. And fortunately, that Friday, I got a phone call, or I can't remember exactly what happened, but New Zealand had renewed my license, because I contacted New Zealand, and they said, yeah, if you coming to live back in New Zealand, we'll just renew your license. I said, yeah, of course, I'm coming back to live in New Zealand. And once you've got a New Zealand license, you can then do what's called a Trans-Tasman Agreement. And so that's how I ended up re-registering in Australia without having to do exams. And my ex-wife and I did 3 or 4 trips that year to Australia to see where we wanted to live and go and speak to dentists and so on. And I ended up moving to Perth in 2002, and the dollar was like 51 cents to the Aussie dollar. And I had 2 properties in America, and I sold those, and I basically was trying to learn how to kite surf, and I wasn't working, and I was rebuilding a house, and I went to a lecture by another dentist, and I learned about CEREC. I'd never heard of CEREC, and Terry Fenn was a CEREC trainer. They were on like blue cam or red cam. You know, you're talking 20 years ago now. And Terry invited me over for a coffee at lunchtime, and he gave me some teeth to prep, and you could see that I could prep teeth. And then he showed me, I scanned it, and then he said, come here, and we milled an inlay, and it was really cool. And he sort of roped me in there basically a few days a week, and I was doing CERECs back then. And then, you know, my advice really, and it's my own feeling, I think every dentist does dentistry wanting to maybe own their own practice one day. And I'm very proud, like with OptiSmile now, I had a young guy join me, Kavir is the most amazing dentist, and another associate who's with me for a short time. And they've now gone and opened their own practice, and he's done that, you know, with my blessing. I wish him well. I'm not religious, so I didn't really give him a blessing, but you know, I tried to assist him as much as possible. And some other associates that had been with me, another young associate, Yaku Maya, who's amazing. He's only like 1 year out of ComServe. He's been with me now 6 or 7 months. And you know, they come, they see what I'm doing. I'm very transparent with everything. And he and his girlfriend have bought a practice in Claremont. He wasn't with me for more than a few months, and he's now bought his own practice. And for him, Bamji is a periodontist, and we've been trying to get the perio busier in the practice, you know, give him more patients and so on. And he's now also just built a practice from scratch. Look, I mean, with the COVID situation, my shoulder's a bit higher than the other. There you go. Anyway, with the COVID situation as it stands, we'll all be walking around like that. Anyway, you know, I think things are going to be pretty tough for the next maybe year. I'm not sure. I mean, that's the big elephant in the room. But
yeah.
You know, you asked about owning buildings, owning practices. I rent my practice. I spent a lot of money on the fit out. I do expect that one day when I do sell it, that the fit out will be worth more because it's very high quality. And to build a practice like what I built there in 5 or 10 or 15 years time, I think will cost you way more. So I see this whole thing about if you don't own the practice, you know, don't put too much money into the fit out. I think maybe I turned that on its head. People saw what I've done. And I think since I've done my practice, other people have also kind of upped their game a bit. I don't want to take credit for that, but I'm only really happy for all of them. You know,
I just want to take you back quickly to Australia and Brisbane. How long did you then practice there? For about 15 years as well, I assume.
Yeah, no, so after working for Terry for a while, I actually decided that I was much better at dentistry than I was at kite surfing, and I gave up the kite surfing. To be honest, I never really could, you know, do very much with a kite board. So I started a practice from scratch in an area right near the university, near where I live. And I got that practice going in about 2004. And it was myself and 2 dental assistants and a hygienist, and I'd seen and done courses about a front deskless setup where you just work with two nurses, and the one nurse greets the patient and does all the paperwork and then takes them back into one operatory. And then when you're done with your patient, with your other nurse in the other operatory or surgery, that nurse then checks the patient out, makes their appointments, does admin, cleans the room. So you always have a fresh nurse. Both of those nurses still work for that dentist, the dentist that bought that practice from me, and the hygienist. And I put in microscopes, because once I started with a microscope, I had one in my own surgery, and then I'd go and do a checkup on a hygiene patient, and I'd say, yeah, that tooth needs an inlay or whatever, and then they'd come back for the treatment, and then I'd have a proper look through the microscope, and it's like, oh my goodness, there's like so much more going on here. And so I put a microscope in the hygienist's surgery, and I had a 3rd surgery as well. So we rotated between the 3 surgeries, the 2 nurses and the hygienist and myself. And I ended up having about 6 days of hygiene. And I didn't work very hard in Perth. I used to charge, by the time I left there, 6 years ago, I was charging $2,200 per inlay or onlay.
Sure.
That's Australian dollars. And that's because that's what the local prosthodontists charge. A lot of general dentists were only charging maybe $1,800. And I actually didn't get a CEREC in that practice. I was doing like quadrants of pressed Emax inlays. My lab guy was Afrikaans guy from Nelspruit, Rian. He did amazing work. And I had a lot of American patients. They were happy to pay, and yeah, I mean, Perth was amazing. What else can I say?
So you had the balls to come back to South Africa and open up a massive practice. I think very few people do that from Australia, come back. What made you do that?
Yeah, I don't know if you can say had the balls. So basically, when I was living in America and Australia, and I was married with no kids, and I was quite successful, and my ex-wife and I enjoyed traveling, and I always joke that I did my whole life backwards, because I was living, traveling like a retired person, business class, first class, relais, chateau, all over the world. I'm embarrassed to say, when I was in my 20s, my ex-wife, we met people who had joined a club. It was an elite club. It's called the Century Club. If you go to 100 countries, you can join this club. And by the time we separated, she had lost track, and we had been to 138 countries. And I'm not sure. It's not backpacking. It was luxury travel. I've been to some places maybe 4 times, 5 times, and so I've had a good innings. I'm a big believer in I think you grow through adversity, and I seem to put myself in adverse circumstances every so often. I don't read the paper, watch TV. When I decided to move back to South Africa, I made that decision. I was thinking of it because I'd come back here to visit, and I saw how beautiful Cape Town was. That was like in the September, about 6 years ago. And then my ex-wife and I separated, and I had a girlfriend for about 7 weeks, and I didn't meet her on Tinder. Nobody was interested in me. She wasn't a young babe. So I was 54 at the time, and she actually was 55. And I thought she was normal, but turned out after 7 weeks, her head like spun round and vomit came out of her mouth, and I almost ran back to my ex-wife. No, just kidding. But what I did do is I messaged my high school sweetheart on Facebook on the 24th of March. That's 6 years ago. And I asked her if she remembered me. She just popped up. I wasn't looking for her. She just came up. A friend, my neighbor, had made friends with her. And I asked her, is that you? And she said yes. And so I came back to South Africa for love. I came back here 3 weeks after that message. We were emailing, and then we started talking, and I was already planning on coming back here to visit my dad again, who at that time wasn't well. And I came back here 3 weeks later, and I was only back here for a few days in Sea Point, right near where my practice is. I stayed at the New King's Hotel, and I just fell in love with her and with Sea Point. And by the Friday, I was very fit those days. I actually, on the Friday, she had meetings, so I hopped on my bicycle and I did about 125 kilometers. I went down to the lighthouse. I had a coffee and a muffin, and I cruised all around the Cape, and that was just before lunch. You know, I used to do like maybe over 1,500 kilometers a month on my bike. I was a bit crazy in those days. And anyway, I came back. I told her I was going to come back, and you know, 3 weeks later, I came back again to visit her. And by the end of the year, I moved back here on the 5th of December. And I just happened to be at the Checkers Centre. I was actually going to buy a practice somewhere in Claremont that an agent had offered me. They were wanting about 3 million rand, and for me it didn't sound like a lot of money. It's like, you know, $300,000. Didn't sound like a lot of money, but then I saw the traffic, and then I was in the Checkers Centre on the 3rd floor, and there was nothing going on. You didn't even know there was a 3rd floor there. And just one thing led to another. The landlord, the guy that built the building, was on his way to the gym, and I was chatting to the gym owner, and they introduced me, and they ran upstairs and got a key, and they showed this place to me. And I saw these big windows, and I thought, yeah, I'll put some dental chairs there. And it took me a long time to build it. Everybody saw me coming. You know, I had Australian dollars, and I probably paid twice as much as I should have to fit the place out. And initially we just had three surgeries facing the ocean. And I took 2 suites. One I turned into the waiting room. I knocked through, and I put my microscopes in, and I opened up, just myself and a nurse, no patients. And I'm proud to say that in October, that's 4 years. On the 4th anniversary of opening, we opened a new wing. We now have 500 square meters. I've got 6 ocean-facing surgeries. I've got an operating theatre sedation room with glass that folds back. And we had the Endodontic Society meeting there. We had 60 dentists, because the staff room also has glass that folds back. And you could do live surgery and have maybe 30 or 40 dentists watching. So I set it up to be multi-purpose. I want to give back to the dental community, and to have a place where the trade can come and showcase all the great things in dentistry. Maybe we get people like Miguel Stanley or whoever to come and do some live courses. Sorry, it's just my phone. So anyway, I now have the honor of having a prosthodontist in my practice. Yuri Stain moved from down the road. So Yuri is a acrobatic pilot. He's an amazing guy. He qualified in the 80s in Pretoria, and he went straight to Boston after a few years, and he became a prosto in Boston at a very prestigious, I think, at the Goldman School. I think that's what it's. I think it's the Goldman School in Boston. And Yuri Stain is a legend, and I work side by side with him. And I've got a new graduate and another young dentist, and they get to rub shoulders every day. And Yaku is learning from Yuri. I'm also pleased to say that if this COVID thing didn't happen this week, an endodontist, a local endodontist, is supposed to join me 4 mornings a week. Very, very honored to have Tony Ashberg, who many people, he's a legend as well. I won't say his exact age, but he's on the other side of mid-70s. But if you see him, you know, he looks amazing, and he can find an MB2, not with his eyes closed. He has to have a microscope. Sorry, guys. He's a great teacher. I've got Harris Miatsky, who joined me. We didn't have a single Invisalign patient. Now Harris is probably one of the top Invisalign providers in South Africa. We know that because he's Platinum Elite, which means that he's done between 60 and 80 cases in the last 12 months. Harris has been doing Invisalign for over 18 years, and he also travels to and from the UK every month, and he's platinum level in the UK. So if you joined his 2 accounts together, which they won't do, although now there's some changes with Invisalign, maybe we'll do it, is he's actually like a diamond, double diamond, whatever. And Harris does amazing stuff with Invisalign. The practice does accept referrals. It's a little plug. We will send the patients back to you with straight teeth. And if you want to do their cleanings or their bleaching or their root canals, we won't steal patients from you. But feel free to send your Invisalign patients. And also, I mean, at this point, we're evaluating some of these competitive aligner systems. We're looking very seriously at some South African-made ones. At this point, we feel one should be very cautious. Invisalign is an unbelievable system. Harris does things with their bones. He doesn't just straighten teeth. He broadens arches. Some of the cases, 18-month cases, and it's unbelievable what you can do with Invisalign. It's not like a quick fix. There are cases where you can open bites and do lingual veneers and so on. We've got a fantastic guys, Matrix Dental. I think they're called Matrix Specialists. It's Fahim Bamji and Ridwan Hafaji. They've just opened their doors up in Century City. I haven't been to see their place. It looks amazing. Fahim is also specialized in oral medicine. And, if you look at an X-ray and you think, oh, that's a bone island or whatever, you send him a picture and, he's like a walking encyclopedia. He's amazing. He's an amazing.
He was actually in class with me.
Hey?
He was in class with me at the UWC.
Yeah, he's a real gentleman. He's very quiet spoken. The patients love him. And he's done some full mouth cases on patients. One little old lady, she needed a clearance and 6 implants. And then 2 days later, I was in the lift with her. And she had she was a little old lady, and I couldn't actually believe it was her. There was no swelling. She doesn't take painkillers. She said she had no pain.
Sure. And
there was no bruising, and that's the kind of stuff that Fahim does. Kavir has got a practice now called Rattan and Singh. He's opened up with Nivi Singh. If you guys have got a case that you want advice on, Kavir's amazing. He's done a lot of cases at OptiSmile.
Is he a perio guy or prosthodontist? What is he?
No, so Kavir comes from a family of dentists. His dad is a dentist. His uncle's oral surgeon. he lives and breathes dentistry. When he joined me at OptiSmile, neither of us really had a lot of patience. And he just came every day at 8 and at 5. He came to me and he said, "I'm going to go home now. Is that okay?" And he was on commission and he basically wasn't making any money because there weren't any patients. And I signed him up on this, a couple of years ago, this cosmetic masters. It was quite expensive, but for me it was an investment. And he watched did those courses over and over and over. And he had big books. He belonged to ITI and he was doing all his exams for ITI. And he's done a lot of courses. He does amazing, what do you call it? Membrane, root. Is that coming from your side?
Yeah, I think it's my wife singing upstairs, trying to get me to finish probably.
I thought maybe you live near a mosque or something.
No, it's my wife. She's quite a good singer, so I think that's the signal that I need to go. Yeah, we're actually at the hour mark. So I want to ask you one more tip. If you can give advice to a young dentist, I think a lot of guys are playing with the idea of moving abroad and going to work abroad. You've been to some of the places all of us dream to go work, and now you live in Cape Town. Just tell us a little bit about your experience about living in those places and working in those places, and now being back home. Is it so much better being around there, and how does South Africa compare to them?
So, I mean, I've loved. People always say, "What's your favorite country that you've visited, or where do you prefer living?" So, I'm a kind of person that if I think about yesterday, I don't have any regrets or resentments. I try to learn from the past, and I try to look forward to the future. At the moment, I'm trying to figure out. I was listening to that talk by your one with what's his name, with Jamil Gardi, and he covered so much stuff. And I'm sure, like everyone else, to be honest, I'm not having a 21-day holiday. I've been collaborating with friends in Joburg that are in different industries and trying to find solutions for dentistry. Working overseas, you got good dentists and bad dentists everywhere. My advice is to join the composite club. Yesterday was amazing. I learned so much. When people ask questions or other people answer questions, if people can watch a rerun of the composite club, I think, living overseas, if people say the grass is greener on the other side, as the expression goes, that's because there's more shit there. And I think you can basically practice good dentistry anywhere, because there's always going to be people that want what you have to offer. I think the challenge is going to be how we can do really good dentistry more efficiently and pass the savings on to patients, because I'm not sure that people are going to be able to afford a full mouth of ceramic. A person who maybe was going to spend 200,000 or 300,000 rand on a full mouth rehab a few weeks ago, they might think twice now for a while. So I think it's important to learn how to do these injection molded composites, and your work is amazing using those bands. But if people want to go and work overseas because they think things are better there, good luck. I think everyone should try see the world if they can. Trying to travel on South African rands is, I would say, impossible at this point. But we've got the internet. You can travel in your mind. It's not the same thing. I went to America. I bid on a ticket at a charity auction. I bid a lot of money, and I got 2 tickets to America. And I should have just given them the money and say, keep the tickets, because I went to America just for a few weeks. We drove up the coast and we stayed in like motels and that. And, you know, just to get a coffee, to get food, it was super expensive when you convert to rands. At this point, like anyone else, I'm trying to figure out how I can earn a few dollars, because if I can just earn just $1, you know, that's like 15 Rand. So
20 Rand at the moment almost.
Yeah, 20 Rand. If anyone wants to contact me directly and wants personal advice, my number is 071 337 4807. During this COVID thing, if you go to my website, optismile.co.za, you'll see I've set up a booking calendar and an online video system using G Suite. I'm happy to jump on Zoom or Skype or one of those team viewer and help you set it up, tell you how to do it. I'm also speaking to a group in Australia called Virtuo Den, and they've got a whole system for virtual dentistry. I do think after the COVID thing, we might start actually doing our new patient consults like this over the internet. I mean, imagine if you can talk to all your new patients in the evening, and then next day when you come in, you've already met them. They know what you offer. You've maybe chatted about their mouth, and you haven't been exposed to their germs or anything. So I do think everyone should jump on with virtual dentistry.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks so much for all your time and your effort and for everything you give back to dentistry in South Africa. I was so lucky to meet you yesterday, and thanks for also joining the Composite Club and giving your insight. I think everyone learned a lot from you.